Worked out. I think I got it worked out now. I'm sorry. Somehow I stupidly disconnected the camera, and I'm not sure even exactly what I've done, but I'm back. So I'm going to go back to where I was. I was talking about I was in Lithuania, and I've stood on a place where George W. Bush had given that, and so the Baltic states were so very in Ukraine's corner, and then somebody asked me about Moldova. I don't think that the Russians can. And I'm not a military expert, but from everything that I know about logistics, I don't think that it's feasible for the Russians to be able to invade Moldova in any meaningful way. They can stir up or foment some insurrection there, but to do what they're doing to Ukraine there, they can only do after they have already taken Ukraine all the way to the border so that they have some kind of logistics corridor. Now, this was one of the reasons why, just what I was saying when the thing went off, this is one of the reasons why it was so important to stop Putin here, because if you didn't stop Putin here, Moldova is also not Ukraine. And they have a breakaway region, just like they do in Ukraine, that I would imagine Putin would love to be able to grab a hold of and be able to, you know, incorporate that also into Russia as well. So I hope that I answered your question. I see three people are now back. So if that answered the question, great. If not, you can look this up afterwards, and I am sorry about that. Those of you who are just trickling back in, if you have other questions for me, I'm happy to answer the questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to say this: Zelensky was absolutely right when he was saying, and this I was saying this before it broke up before. The fight is here. It's our fight, and he's right. And even as an American, I recognize this is our fight just as much as it is yours. You're the pointy end of the spear, but we're going to supply you, and we need to supply you because if Putin, not even Putin, let's take Putin out of the equation because Putin is doing this thing and he's going to keep going on until Moldova. But think about other dictators around the world. Think about what Xi is thinking about right now about Taiwan. Think about what some other dictator somewhere in the world is thinking about knocking over a neighbor or doing this kind of thing. If the world doesn't rise and say, you know what, that's not okay, then it's going to happen more and more. So that's why I would argue this is as much our fight, and Zelensky's absolutely right about that. And man, that guy's a great leader. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But if you have questions, put your questions into the comments below, and I'm happy to try to answer it. Zelensky is an incredible leader, and I read it in an interview with him. I don't know, it was maybe 4 months in, 5 months in, and they were talking about like, well, like, did you know that you were such a great leader? The interviewer, and he's like, look, I'm not a great. It's not about that. I just made a decision. I recognize, people are trying to figure out what's going on. And I have to be there saying, this is what you have to do. This is what it means to be Ukrainian. Do what I am doing. And I have to be an example for them. And I thought, wow, what an incredible, incredible leader. And that's exactly what he was. Okay, there's 9 of you here. Anybody who has a question for me? What can I answer? I will try to scratch where you itch. So pop something into the chat and I'm happy to do it. It's day 300. I don't think that Putin thought it would last 3 days, let alone 3 weeks when they first invaded Ukraine. And it just, if I was Putin, I wouldn't be getting a lot of sleep right now because this has gone on. Like he can claim like, look at the victories. I have this landmass, but the rest of the world looks at it and goes, you have this landmass. Okay, but you've lost land in your own landmass, and most of us don't even recognize that you have it. And the people that do recognize it are just a bunch of authoritarians. Okay, I'm going to go 5 more minutes, and if anybody has questions, you got 5 minutes to answer or to ask, and then I'm going to be done. But I'm only going to give you so much time because I have other things. I was just trying to get into a live stream while I had some time. So tell me what your questions are. ML Harden, one of my heroes. This guy has asked such great questions. If Zelensky, Ukraine does not succeed, will we have to go through this again? Yes. You will, and you'll go through it sooner than later, and it will be more blood sooner. That's exactly what I believe, and that's why he needs to be supported. Would you marry Zelensky if you could? Question becomes serious and humorous. I'm happily married, and my wife probably wouldn't like that, and neither would I. But I think I revere him. I think of him like Churchill. Paul Young, can I think of an off ramp for poor Putin? No, no, actually, I can't think of an off ramp, and that's the misery here because Putin has to keep coming, and Zelensky has to keep coming. Look, Zelensky can't make peace either. Like if Zelensky were to say, you know what, let's just give Russia those territories so we can have peace. Like Ukrainians are now at the point where there's such bad blood, such generational hatred between Ukrainians and Russia that there's no way that he could even do that. So I can't think of it. It's going to be settled on the battlefield, and that's what was in the cards as soon as Putin did this because Putin did not respect the documents, the rule of law, the right. And people will go, oh, well, what about Minsk? They're not. What about the Budapest Memorandum, where when Ukraine gave up its nukes, it gave up its nukes with the promise from the U.S. and the U.K. and Russia that it would be its land, its borders would be secured, and Russia's the one doing this. So it can only be settled on the battlefield. M.L. Harden said, "Thank you, Prof. Keep up the great work. Thank you for thinking through this as much as you have. I've grown from hearing from you." Another one. Sorry for the weird question with would I want to marry Zelensky? No, but look, he's the Churchill of our generation. I'm a management professor. I teach leadership courses, power and influence, leadership, fundamentals of leadership, managing with excellence, these kinds of courses, right? So I see his excellent leadership a mile away. And that's the topic of what I'm talking about in today's video that I haven't posted yet. It's just absolutely amazing what a great leader the guy is. Again, he's the Churchill of our generation. Okay. Seen my question. What your question, Martin? Please repost your question, Martin. I haven't seen it. Thank you so much. Anyway. Okay. Well, Martin, if you can ask it again in the next minute before I hang up, I'm happy to try to answer it. I'm sorry if I missed your question, Martin. Okay. So yeah, Zelensky, he's just an amazing leader. Will Putin be knocked down? Man, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't really say what's going to happen to Putin. It's not going to go well for him in about any scenario I can think about, whether he loses militarily or he loses because but I don't see people like ousting him. Like not until it gets so bad. Another wave of military like we had the special military operation. There was nothing to see here, and then we had this massive wave of mobilization, and 300,000 were mobilized, and 1 million left the country. Another wave of that kind of thing, I think, could oust him, but I don't know that there's any feeling in Russia to oust him or any great majority to oust him. There's a majority that wants the war to end, but I don't know that that's the case to oust him. They think of Putin fondly. They think of Joseph Stalin fondly. Like, okay. M.L. Harden said, when this is over, Russia has lost. What will Russia look like? It'll have a lot of reparations to deal with. I think that the reparations should come in the form of Russian oil to make good for all of Ukraine's needs, because otherwise Europe, who has been supporting Russia, supporting Ukraine, and the United States has been supporting Ukraine, they're going to have to pay for that. Why should they have to pay for it? The U.S. has already paid, has already been on the line for upwards of $50 billion. So I think that ought to come from Russian oil, and it should be hard. I've heard somebody in the comments the other day said, like, well, what if they just gave up these territories? Well, what if you gave up Belgorod and a few other for your other territories? I mean, it's like the deck is always stacked against Ukraine. I don't understand why. Okay. Other questions? Finally, no question, but thanks for your work. Hey, absolutely. SG. Smiley face from Jan. Back at you. Jan sounds like a Norwegian, Swedish, something in that Nordic kind of thing. Jan, maybe. He will probably fall from the window or fall over the railing. Yeah, a lot of people that are close to Putin tend to have bad falling accidents. That seems bad. Martin, so thank you and keep up the great work. And that's where I'm going to end, guys. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I know that this was no notice. I just figured I'd put this out and say, hey, anybody want to talk? Thank you for your questions. Mo Harden, I have to say, see you. Wouldn't want to be you because I'm not smart enough. Well, you're a pretty smart guy. You asked some really good questions. Thank you, guys. Talk to you later. Bye bye.